and let us all do we can to build a better future.
As time progresses on, we are once again realizing people are finally waking up to the fact that Jimmy Dore and so many other independent commentators were correct in their analysis and breaking down the utter hypocrisy of one Senator Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, who has been revealed as nothing more than a sheepdog for the Democratic Party. Now, we here at Heartlands Media have also been critical of calling out Bernie Sanders for his hypocrisy. Jimmy Dore was raked through the coals wrongly throughout not only with the aftermath of the 2020 election cycle, but since then for his criticism of Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, why are we going after Bernie Sanders? Many people would say, well, gee, kid, isn't Bernie Sanders the progressive senator from Vermont who started a revolution? Yeah, well, the answer is no. He created a movement, but he abandoned the movement. He created something that I don't think even he fully understood. See, if we wind back the clocks of 2016, remember a time where many people were just sick and tired of the standard politician, the standard debates, and in comes Donald Trump, of course, for the Republican primary, and Senator Bernie Sanders, who shakes things up. People wanted to listen to something different. People wanted to be inspired. And Bernie Sanders, whether he likes it or not, people wanted him over Hillary Clinton. And before any Hill Dog or Vote Blue, no matter who sycophant decides to type in the comment section below or in the live stream chat, it should be remembered that there is numerous pieces of evidence from the 2016 Democratic primary that show that the DNC worked with the Clinton campaign to deny Bernie Sanders the nomination in 2016. Now, Bernie Sanders being the cuck that he was, and unbeknownst to a lot of people, we just assumed that he was having some other plan or strategy. But all in all, he was working with the DNC, more than happy to more or less sell out what he created. And in 2020, I, as well as a few other people, assumed that he would be ready for the 2020 primary. And there was a point where he had it. But no, he gave it up. And being the spineless, nutless wonder that he was, decided to embrace and support his good friend Joe. And by compromising and giving up his campaign during the 2020 primary, Bernie Sanders got a whopping 0 from the Biden-Harris administration. Now, here we are in the final months of 2023, and Bernie, being the good cuck that he is, endorsed his good friend Joe Biden. Now, in comes this ridiculous, horrific war that's happening between Israel and Palestine. And Bernie Sanders, while he did call for a humanitarian pause, is not calling for a ceasefire. And when he's confronted by it, when he's confronted by these organizations, especially people who support him, he's quick to dismiss them. First, let's talk about how Bernie Sanders called up more or less to get protesters away from his office as they press him for calling for a ceasefire. Bernie Sanders, the nutless wonder. Jimmy Dore was correct in calling it out because we're going to be playing a video of showing the utter hypocrisy and biggest political disappointment ever for the progressive movement. So let's go ahead and pull this up here. Protesters occupy Senator Sanders' office for Gaza ceasefire. Protesters have occupied Senator Bernie Sanders' office, demanding that he call for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Protesters went inside Sanders' Washington, D.C. office and demanded an immediate ceasefire, according to activist group DSA Palestine. His chief of staff reportedly denied to speak with members. First of all, anyone associated with DSA, remember, they just voted to still remain to be a part of the Democratic Party. So if you are a DSA volunteer or a sucker still paying for membership with the DSA leadership, and we talked about this on a previous episode of Hardlands Media, voted to remain to be part of the Democratic Party. Stop wasting your time with them. Anyways, hey, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. In a post on Twitter, the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights wrote, as Senator Sanders' chief of staff walks away, you walk away from us as our people die. The post included a video of protesters shouting as Senator Sanders' chief of staff and chanting ceasefire. According to a separate post from another Twitter user, the protesters read the names of over 7,000 plus Palestinians killed since October 7th and holding up photos to show they are not just numbers. The post includes photos of the demonstration in which protesters held signs and banners urging Sanders to stop arming Israel, stop funding genocide. According to some protesters' estimates, reading the full list of Palestinians killed would take more than 6 hours. Sanders, accompanied by Senator Elizabeth Warren, wrote a letter. They wrote a letter. Ooh la la. To President Biden Wednesday to express serious concern about Israel's invasion. Wow. Warren and Sanders wrote a letter to Biden. Hey, folks, I want to ask you a question. Controversial statement here. We're going to have democracy in the chat. Type 1 if you still believe in Senator Bernie Sanders that he has a strategic political plan. You just don't see it yet, guys. You still got to believe. How dare you side with Jimmy Dore? Jimmy Dore is a pothead comedian from Chicago. How dare you? Type 2, like, no, man, I don't believe in Bernie Sanders. Jimmy Dore is correct in assessing that Bernie Sanders is a hypocrite, a fraud, and a spineless, nutless wonder. I wonder how many twos we're going to get in the chat. The senators reiterated that they support Israel's right to defend itself following Hamas' surprise attack on October 7th. It killed more than 1,400 people in Israel, but expressed concern about the likely humanitarian toll. Well, no shite that could be left in the wake of massive invasion by Israel forces. Though Sanders previously criticized Israel forces for cutting off access to resources in Gaza and asked the Israeli military to refrain from attacking Gaza, the senator recently praised the U.S. for offering support Israel in its counterattack. Just like how Sanders has been utterly quiet about the anti-war movement or critics of the war in Ukraine. Sanders is among a group of progressive lawmakers who have faced backlash for their response to the Israel attacks. Democrats have put pressure on members of Congress to condemn the counteroffense. Wow. Now, let's talk about something else here. Sanders says he doesn't know that a ceasefire is possible with an organization like Hamas. You know, Bernie, for a politician, you fail to see what's been going on for 75 years between Israel and Palestine, about the utter hatred and cycle of revenge that's been repeating over and over again, much with the help of the U.S. government, by the way. Independent Senator Bernie Sanders said Sunday he doesn't know that a ceasefire is possible in the Israel-Hamas war with an organization like Hamas involved. I don't know if you can have a permanent ceasefire with an organization like Hamas, which is dedicated to turmoil and chaos and destroying the state of Israel. You know, I don't know if Bernie has seen Gaza and what it looks like, but it's like an open-air prison, Bernie. The people of Gaza and the West Bank are constantly unable to have clean drinking water, electricity, gas, all that kind of good stuff, you know. And again, it's just throwing it out there. It's a little suspicious what happened on October 7th. That's all. Just, you know, those big concrete walls, those barbed wire fences, watchtowers, those drones, those security cameras, the best secret intel service. How did they not see that haymaker coming? You would think they would see it coming. And look, let's face it, sometimes people let their guard down. Or was a stand down order given? Who knows? And already Israel continued its fourth week of intense bombardment. But hey, listen. I think it's time we give praise to one person who called out who Bernie Sanders truly is. Now, Jimmy Dore, throughout 2020, and hell, even, you know what? I'm gonna say this here. In the aftermath of 2016, Jimmy Dore called out Bernie Sanders in the aftermath of 2016 because we all saw what happened. Now, what's important about the 2016 Democratic primary? Because it was during that time, people like Nico House, Convo Couch, and a few other independent media networks, including Jimmy Dore, called out for the fact that the DNC was committing election fraud. And it was revealed through documentation as well that the DNC is a private institution. This is something the Democratic Party admitted to. And as a private institution, the DNC has a right to intervene and select who they want as their nominee. Hence the reason why they have superdelegates, but also for the fact that the game is rigged. So if you're like Fat Tony, Cenk Uygur, or Marianne Williamson, or anybody else that's throwing their hat in the ring for the Democratic primary, if there's anybody of merit to really talk about, you don't have a chance. And even in the unlikely scenario that the outsider candidate beats the establishment pick, the DNC has the legal right to say, we don't like the results, and we're going to still go with our establishment pick. Controversial statement. The Republican primary is more Democratic than the Democratic primary because the Republicans don't have superdelegates. But don't worry, Republican voters. Just you wait. The RNC will soon click, copy, and paste what the DNC is doing. Mark my words. They will. They will do that someday. Just not today. But let's face it, it's a two-party system. So Bernie, being the cuck that he was, allowed his supporters and volunteers to be harassed in Philly in 2016 and also dismissed his followers in the aftermath of 2020. Jimmy Dore. Good to see everyone else finally started to see what a pothead jagoff comedian saw over 3 years ago. Bernie Sanders. Bomb away Bernie Sanders. Biggest political disappointment of our generation, to quote Brianna Joy Gray. Bernie allowed the DNC to walk all over him. It wasn't that he was outmaneuvered. It wasn't that he was tricked or anything else like that. He allowed it to happen. He didn't believe in his political movement. He didn't believe in his volunteers. He didn't believe in any of the crap that he was talking about. I think he was more surprised that he had so many people following him. And that's the truth. He was the dog that caught the car and didn't know what to do with it. And in comparison to Trump, while Trump kept his organization together, his followers together, Bernie did not. And Bernie would constantly compromise and give up. I want to pull up this tweet here. It's a retweet of what Jimmy Dore tweeted out. Biggest political disappointment of our generation. And AIPAC here. AIPAC. Tweeting out. Bernie Sanders. Bomb away Bernie Sanders. Let's play this video. Hang on, folks. If you get easily angry, well, don't watch.
I want to just clarify one thing, Senator, if I might. You support a humanitarian pause in Gaza. Some of your fellow progressives say that there should be a full-on ceasefire, which would require an agreement on both sides to halt the fighting. Do you support a ceasefire? And if not, why not?
Well, I don't know how you can have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas, which is dedicated to turmoil and chaos and destroying the state of Israel. And I think what the Arab countries in the region understand, that Hamas has got to go. So
I wanted to.
So he's saying that Hamas has got to go, right? But the thing is, there's an interesting story about how these terrorist organizations get started. I mean, nobody looked into the fact in the 80s when the Reagan administration decided to give money to this guy. You never heard of him. Osama bin Laden. Don't worry. Not important name. But, Osama had this organization, not important, called Al-Qaeda. They were in Afghanistan fighting the Soviets. It's not like we gave money. Oh, wait, we did give money to them. Well, but I'm pretty sure that's the last time the United States created a Frankenstein monster that would eventually come back to haunt us. We don't want to talk about the time when Donald Rumsfeld was shaking hands with a guy named, and you never heard of him, Saddam Hussein. Uh-oh. I hope I'm not bringing up a pattern here. Again, it's almost kind of like if we take an in-depth, deeper dive, it's almost as if a lot of governments are funding these terrorist groups and tyrants and dictators. Israel would never do that, would they? The answer might surprise you, my friends. And what's the cost of it right now? Well, 4 weeks of bombing, the numbers of dead in Gaza is going past 8,000. Hey, it's going to get to 10,000. Talk about a goal there. What no one cares to bring up here, especially to people like Bernie, is that Prime Minister Netanyahu had a lot of domestic problems. A perfect way to distract issues is to have a conflict. So that way people don't look too deep into what's happening in your backyard. I mean, goodness gracious, Cretaceous. Talk about an utter disappointment. Now, Bernie, to be fair, recently called out AIPAC for tweeting him out saying that he's in full that because they were saying he's in full support. But look, let's just pull this up here. Just want to pull this up here. Both AIPAC and the Israeli government are promoting Bernie Sanders' denunciation for calls for a ceasefire. Who needs neocons like Lindsey Graham Cracker? That nutcase. That nutcase. When you got bombs away, Bernie. I want to give credit to Dan Cohen because he made that up. Here's an image from AIPAC right here. Sanders answers Dana Bash at CNN about fellow progressives calling for a ceasefire. And hey, Israeli government quoting Bernie. Here, just one more time, just to enrage everybody, just so you could see Bernie Sanders when he's confronted about a ceasefire.
Just clarify one thing, Senator, if I might. You support a humanitarian pause in Gaza. Some of your fellow progressives say that there should be a full-on ceasefire, which would require an agreement on both sides to halt the fighting. Do you support a ceasefire? And if not, why not?
Well, I don't know how you can have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas, which is dedicated to turmoil and chaos and destroying the state of Israel. And I think what the Arab countries in the region understand, that Hamas has got to go. So
I want to just clarify one thing.
That's Bernie, everybody's favorite cuck. But hold on. Here are those protesters at Senator Bernie Sanders' office.
They were both killed. This is Bassan. Bassan was passionate about getting Gazans cancer treatment. You know why? Because Israel requires a permit when you have cancer. When you're a 2-year-old and you have cancer, you need a permit to leave Gaza to get cancer treatment in Israel. And these two people that Israel killed were part of a community trying to make sure no Gazan child, no Gazan has to die because they don't have cancer treatment. This is who Israel is targeting. They were both killed.
Now, this was all taking place in Bernie's office. Now, what would Bernie Sanders say? He would still tell his followers and supporters, hey, support Biden because Trump's the bad guy. Listen, folks, Bernie, your message doesn't work anymore. This is only an 8-second video, but I think people are finally waking up to the fact of what we were all saying in 2020. Voting for Biden will make sure nothing will fundamentally change. And Bernie Sanders, being the nutless wonder that he was, shout out again to Jimmy Dore for calling him out, not only in the aftermath of 2016, but in the aftermath of 2020, for the fact that he gave up his political movement, Bernie Sanders did, to support somebody like Biden. And everyone in 2020 was bullying people who were questioning, well, why should I vote for Biden? He's a Democrat. He's a corporatist. He's not going to fight for issues. But what did the vote blue no matter who people do? And people like Bernie Sanders do? Because that's what Bernie Sanders did. He partook in it as well. They bullied you to vote for Biden. Well, it's not going to work this time. Seeing these 8 seconds is so beautiful. Here, let's watch it together.
My message to President Biden is I voted for you and I regret it.
Will you vote for him in 2024?
Absolutely not.
Correct. And Bernie, just so you all know, won't meet with these protesters. He won't stand in solidarity, even with progressive quote unquote progressive lawmakers who are calling for a ceasefire. Now, I'm not expecting AOC and the fantastic Congressional Progressive Caucus to really do anything, because at the end of the day, the Israeli lobby is just as powerful as big oil, the prison industrial complex, big pharma, the military industrial complex, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But let's make this clear here. If this is an evidence or proof to all of you that we got to stop hero worshiping these politicians, I don't know what else to tell you. And to be clear here, when it was slowly being revealed to me, and it took me a while to come to terms as well about who Bernie Sanders is, I was disappointed. I really felt angry and sad because Bernie, to be clear here, inspired me and my colleague Daniel Lupker to create Hard Lens Media. His words. However, Unfortunately, Daniel and I believed in the mission of Hardlands Media, as did everyone else who started getting involved in independent media, as did all of you. You believed in the message of a better future, fighting for progressive policies. And I held on to the audacity of hope that maybe Bernie Sanders could be that leader. And I really hoped that in 2020 he would have pulled it off, but no. And thankfully, we had a comedian like Jimmy Dore to really wake us all up to the fact of who Bernie Sanders was. So what is the real solution? I've been saying this on the show, and I'm going to keep on repeating it because at the end of the day, the ball is in your court as well. We got to start fighting for citizen ballot initiatives, and we have to start building movements and organizations not connected to Washington, D.C. Each of us has to be that knight on the hill, because no politician is going to be in the background ready to do a charge to help us out. Bernie Sanders is part of the Washington, D.C. machine. He's not there. He's not going to be there with us. He's going to be silent. I can respect him for inspiring people, but that's as far as I'm willing to go. In regards to actually getting things done and actually fighting, Bernie Sanders doesn't have what it takes, and Jimmy Dore called him out. So many other people called him out as well. Break away from hero worshiping. Bernie, you had your time. Why don't you step aside? If you're not going to fight, if you are not going to hold your movement together, then go. You have to go so that others can step up, because that's how it's going to get done. And I'm not expecting Bernie Sanders to do the right thing because he's from Washington, D.C., and he's part of that machine. And he gave up everything to help out the DNC, which is now, I hope, finally being revealed to voters that it's just the same as the Republican Party. Break away from the two-party system now more than ever.